Hey everyone, it's James from the Fit RV. Or today it's actually more like the Fit Not RV. See, we're supposed to be bringing you exercise videos with volcanoes and glaciers and all sorts of cool things like that. But when your RV won't start, you have to make some changes. So here I am in our basement gym. But it's not a total loss. What I thought I would do, and this one's going to be one pretty much for the guys, is I'm going to show you some exercises and the kind of stuff I like to do when Steph isn't around to challenge my balance and activate my core and all those sorts of things. I go right for old school weightlifting kind of stuff. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you some traditional weightlifting exercises that we all know, and then I'm going to show you how we can adapt them to do them with stretch bands, because these are a lot easier to take in your RV than all the rest of this stuff. Now, a word about the stretch bands. We like these stretch bands that have the carabiners on them, and the reason we like these is because you can stack them. You can hook more than one of these things up at once, and then that way you can get more resistance than you could with just a single band alone. Now, it's not going to be anywhere near the kind of resistance you can get with free weights, obviously, but when you're in an RV, the game changes, and it's not about doing max weight and building mass. It's just about maintaining what you've got and trying not to lose any ground until you get back to a gym. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be some old school stuff. It's going to be 5 exercises. We're going to start with legs, and then we're going to move to back, chest, biceps, and triceps. That's how we're going to roll. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with squats. So I'll get set up for that, and we'll get to it. Okay, first up, squats. The traditional way, I'm not doing anything here that you haven't seen before, but just a quick refresher. Feet about shoulder width apart. I'm going to put the bar on my shoulders. I'm going to keep my chest out. I'm going to drive my hips back, and I'm going to try to not let my knees go forward of my toes. And with traditional weights, I do heavier weights, and I do maybe eight or so. But I'm just going to do 1 or 2 here. And then we'll move and show you how to do it with the stretch bands. There's 1, 2. Basic stuff, we all know it. So now we'll do it with the stretch bands. Alright, so now squats with the stretch bands. I've got a fairly heavy band on here, but I'm going to be stretching it a pretty long way. So again, same thing, feet shoulder width apart, and you want to make sure that you've got the band completely under the arches of your feet. You do not want this thing snapping back into your face while you're trying to do this. So feet shoulder width apart, grab the handles, bring them up to my shoulders just like I had them before, and then the motion is the same thing. We're just going to squat and then back up. And again, knees don't go forward to the toes, drive your hips back, chest out, all those sorts of things. And since this is a lighter weight, instead of doing 8 or 10, you're going to do, 15 or so. And you may even want to double up the bands if you can, but it's kind of a balancing act between getting a strong enough band and being able to stretch it far enough to complete the motion. So that's squats. Next up, we're going to show you some rows. Okay, next up, we're doing a seated row. Now, I've got a cable machine here. So we've got the weights on, grab the handles, brace your feet, and again, you're going to keep your chest up. And the way I like to think of doing this is driving back with my elbows and then squeezing my shoulder blades in towards my spine, so that I'm really working my back instead of just like a bicep kind of thing. So, traditionally, the exercise looks something like this. And doing it in a regular gym, you'd probably load up and, do again a set of 8 to 10. But now we're going to change it up and do it with the stretch bands, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, and so now we'll show you the seated row adapted to do with stretch bands. You're probably not going to have a rack like this when you're out in your RV, but you'll more than likely be able to find a tree. And that's kind of what I found works the best for this. So basically, and I've doubled up the bands here so you can see what I mean when I'm talking about, stacking the resistance bands. So basically thread your resistance bands behind the tree, and then to mimic what you would do in a gym, put your feet on the tree, and it's the same motion. So, and again, my tree is sort of small because it's this little white pole here, but you're going to try to get a full extension on the front, and then it's the same motion. You drive back with your elbows, chest up, squeeze the shoulder blades in towards the spine. And I can't quite go all the way out because I lose resistance in the bands, but you get the idea. If I had a bigger tree, this wouldn't happen. So that's back. So we've done legs, back, now we're moving on to chest. Okay, chest, bench press. It doesn't get any more basic than that. If you don't know how to do a bench press, you probably missed a whole lot of gym class. But I'll show you a couple here anyway. Few things to note. It's an overhand grip on the bar. Hands are going to be slightly wider than the chest. And I like to put my feet up on the bench so that I don't tend to do any of that thing where you arch your back, because that's just not good. So with that, boom. Bench press. But now it gets a little different when we show you this one with the resistance bands. Okay, bench press with resistance bands. Now your first thought is probably going to be to do this just like you would with a traditional bench press and, you know, throw the bands under a bench and go for it. The trouble with that is that when you're in an RV park, most of the benches I've seen, they're all attached to picnic tables. And so you'd have to do kind of a one-armed bench press because, you know, there'd be a picnic table over half of you. So we have to adapt it a little bit. We're going to take advantage of the fact that this is a resistance band exercise instead of a free weight exercise that relies on gravity. That means we can do it standing up. So find your old friend the tree, or in my case this white pole, put the band around the tree and get into position. Now you're going to want to do this with an underhand grip. Like, notice that the bands are coming under my arms. And the reason you want to do that is so that it doesn't rip all the hair out of your arms, because it's quite painful. So if you can lean against the tree, if your tree is big enough, great. Otherwise, you're going to have to kind of brace yourself and then be ready to do the same motion as you would with the bench press. And again, this is going to be quite a bit of a lighter exercise than you would have with free weights, but it's a resistance band and it's not about making gains, it's just about keeping what you've got. So that's chest. Next we're going to move on to biceps. Okay, next, biceps. Doesn't get any more basic than this. We're just going to do a standing dumbbell curl. So, you know, there's your grip. Keep your elbows in, don't be swinging weights around, and just curl them up. And this is going to look pretty much exactly the same when we do it with the resistance bands. So that's next. Okay, resistance band curl, not a lot of creativity required here. Again, you're going to stand on the band, feet sort of shoulder width apart. And again, make sure that you've got the band securely under the arches of your feet, and you don't want this thing snapping up at you, especially the heavier bands you get. And then, again, it's the same exercise. Elbows in, you're not going to be swinging around and rocking, and you're just curling up. And that's it. Okay, last up, triceps. This exercise goes by several different names: French curls, skull crushers. But I'm sure you've seen it, but basically I'm going to lie down and I'm going to curl the bar to my forehead. Couple things to note. Let me get into position. I'm going to try to keep my elbows in roughly the same place and then curl the bar towards my forehead. Another thing that people have a tendency to do, and I'm guilty of this when the weight goes up, is that my elbows will start coming out. You don't want to do that. You want to keep your elbows in the same place and just push with your triceps to bring the bar back up. All right, so that's it with the free weights. Now we'll go to the resistance band. So, skull crushers with resistance bands. Again, we're going to take advantage of the fact that we're not necessarily relying on gravity for this exercise, and we're going to find a tree. You're going to need a tree that's a little bit taller this time, maybe like a branch with a crook in it, or there's a way, I've got some other stretch band attachments and things that I'm going to make another video on later. I've got a way that you can get around that, but for now, let's just say you look for a branch with a crook or something, and here's what you're going to do. You're going to loop it up. You're going to get in more or less the same position, but since you're standing, I find it easier to do with a split stance. So, you know, one foot in front of the other, kind of stabilize everything, and then here you go with the same motion. Keep your elbows in, try not to move your elbows. Bam. It's a little bit different than doing it lying down because there's a lot more of that stabilizing stuff that I'm sure Steph would be all happy about. But it's more or less the same exercise, and the more you can keep your elbows still, the more you're going to hit your triceps. All right, and that's it. So now if I was working out at home here in the gym, I would do a workout like that 3 times a week. I would do 3 sets of each exercise, and depending on how heavy I wanted to go, it could be as few as 6 or as many as 10 reps. Working with resistance bands again, it's going to be a bit of a different workout. You're not going to go for max weight or anything like that. So I'd probably recommend doing 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps because it's not going to be as much weight. You're just trying not to lose the gains you make when you're in a traditional gym. And again, these are the straps we like. They have the carabiners. I'll put a link on the page with the ones that we recommend. You'll get a big bunch of straps with varying resistance, a couple handles, and it packs down really small, and it should be easy to take on your next RV trip. See you on the road. Bye.